Welcome back to a chilling night of stories. Here are 3 stories that are sure to keep you awake. First story. I used to work at a middle-of-nowhere McDonald's just outside of Port Richmond, Virginia. Spooky, right? But a few months ago, something terrible happened to one of the staff that for some reason justified erasing the place off the map. Not to say I'm sad to see the place gone. Now, the thing about fast food is that it attracts 2 kinds of people. Poor, but intelligent people who are working towards a bigger picture, and total losers who have given up hope. I belong to the latter group, but Grace, man, she was the queen of the former. When we both started together about 8 months ago, I knew straight away this girl was so far out of my league. She was so cool and down to earth and beautiful. She had this way of just accepting people and finding a way to admire them, no matter the person. It didn't matter that she was beautiful, educated, and better than me in every way. When you're the standard suburban moms set their kids not to be, you don't come across that kind of acceptance every day, you know. After months of working together, yay, we got close. Not what you're thinking. So, it must have been mid-June or something, and we'd both been working the drive-thru together for a couple of weeks. When you spend a large portion of your life serving even larger assholes from a tiny window, you get real familiar with the view. From my box, you could see the grass hill that separated the drive-thru from the road. Said road, and beyond that, a Walmart parking lot. I spent so much time staring out of that window, I even started to recognize the cars that drove by. But after my first few weeks, there was one in particular I started to look out for. I thought it must have been the ex-con jitters, or growing up where I did, but I started to get a real bad feeling about this car as the days went by. It was an old Ford truck, one of the '87 F-150 models. Once upon a time, it would have been a real beauty, all bright reds with a white stripe down the middle. Now the red body of the truck was rusted beyond recognition, and the white stripe was a sickly yellow, like rotting teeth. The windows of the truck were the only things that survived the past 20 years unscathed, as they clearly weren't standard. The whole truck was so heavily tinted I couldn't understand how the thing was still on the road. The cops are real eager around here, or maybe that's just my experience. Anyway, the first time I see the truck, it's just parked in the lot across the road opposite. Nothing unusual about that, other than the pedophile chic look. It was just a car in a lot. Probably. The next day, from my booth overlooking the drive-thru, I see the car again. And again. And again. I saw it maybe 30, 40 times that day. I think it was just driving in circles for some reason. Suffice to say, at this point, I'm starting to get real suspicious of this truck. It was looking quiet that night, but the manager was always up my ass if I left my post. So I gave Grace a quick text and asked her to watch the window for me while I went for a piss. When I came back, I asked her about the car, and she got damn quiet. Said that a couple of minutes after I left, she saw the car come down the road and hit the brakes for apparently no reason. She said it stayed there just doing nothing in an empty road, that it felt like whoever was in there was looking at her. I guess it freaked her out when I told her I'd seen it around as well, because she went back to work, then went home before her shift finished. It was the first time I'd seen her anything less than offensively happy. The next day, Grace didn't show up, so I covered her drive-through shift. There was a big queue that evening, so instead of looking out for the truck, I was real focused on working through the white trash piling up along the drive-through. So focused that I didn't notice the truck when it came to the window. No one had taken any orders from the driver. So far as I could see, it had just driven up out of nowhere. So the truck stops at my window, and when I finally notice it, I can't even fucking breath. My eyes are locked on the tar black window, straining for a sight of the driver, but I can't see shit. I just get this feeling like I'm staring down a barrel of crude oil and it's something staring right back at me. I don't know what else to do, so I'm just having a staring contest with this window. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the car races off. Tires screeching, it plows over the grass across the wrong lane and races off into the night. I try to tell the manager, but of course he just tells me to get a grip and deal with my shit. What an asshole. The next day, Grace came back to work and she seemed back to her old self. I was still reeling from last night, and when I told her what had happened, we were both pretty spooked. After a quick smoke, we both agreed that it was probably just some creep playing a joke on us. but we'd both keep an eye just in case. I saw it only briefly that night. It was driving real slow down the road beyond the hill. Its lights were off, so I could only see the truck by the lights of the cars behind. Behind it, the traffic was building up, and you could hear the horns blaring, followed by curses that were cut short as people got close enough to see the windows. Before long, the truck raced off again, apparently done for the evening. When time came for my regular nature break, Grace was happy to take my spot again. That was the last time I saw her. I must have been gone 2 minutes at the most, but by the time I had returned to the window, Grace was gone, and the sound of screeching tires pierced the night. I ran back into the back and called the police, told the manager what I thought had happened, and pushed my way into the office to look at the security tapes. The manager was busy hollering about regulations beyond the door, but I didn't really give a shit. As I turned on the computer and set up the tape, I saw what had happened. The cameras had picked up everything. On the screen, it played out like a bad horror short. The truck had rolled up out of nowhere as soon as I had gone, and with the lights off, Grace had seen it too late. She tried her best to get out of there, but before she could get out, and I can't believe I'm fucking saying this, something came bursting out from inside the truck. 2 long black arms, so thin and sinewy, they seemed more like dead branches than limbs thrust from the darkness where the driver's window should be, and wrapped themselves around Grace's mouth and torso. To reach that far, they must have been 6 feet long at least. It was over in about 2 seconds. Grace was pulled headfirst from the drive, though into the window that never fucking opened, and that was that. The police closed the whole joint after they took my statement. All of us, management included, got let go so fast they actually had to pay us unemployment. We've been looking for her ever since. It's been 6 months now, and it turns out Grace's family are incredibly awesome people. One of her uncles has even taken me on as an apprentice mechanic. No more Mag C assholes for me. It turned out that one of my friend's dads, Justin, was working the case. The guy hates me, but Justin had finally managed to plow him for information. Today, after we met up and spoke about it, I'm convinced what happened in that booth was even more sinister than I first imagined. The police haven't turned up anything. Turns out the plate number I gave them for the truck actually belongs to a car on the other side of the country. They never even managed to see the damn thing on any other cameras around the area, and they've checked them all. It's like the car picked her up, blasted out of the drive-thru, and just vanished. Well, there was one tape they didn't get to look at more than briefly. According to Justin, his dad told him his whole department is up in arms because a couple of suits came in and confiscated the original tape maybe 2 days after the kidnapping. Told the whole force to drop the case and leave it to the feds. No one believes me, not even Grace's family. Even the cops that saw the tape are keeping real quiet for some reason. But I'm not crazy. I saw that window, and I know that whatever took Grace from the booth that day wasn't anything natural. These days, I'm always looking at the road, and even when I'm working in the garage, I've got an eye out on the horizon, waiting for a car with tar black windows. Story 2. Why I stopped working at McDonald's. I can't believe it. A full 13 years of my life in a school system that has caused me nothing but stress and anxiety. 4 years of my life wasting my resources and money at community college. And all it's landed me is a shit job at McDonald's. You know there's something wrong with American education when you dedicate your entire youth to a system that you were forced into, and all it gets you a minimum wage job at some fast food place. While I may be venting about my personal life, I am not writing this as a means of coping with my suppressed anger. This is something that has been slowly ruining my life to the point where I am even scared to leave my own house. To start, I've been working at this job for about 6 months now. I am a male in my mid-20s, and I have had a long history of meeting weirdos and creeps, but this one certainly takes the cake. Ever since I started working here, there was this guy. We'll call him Joe. Fake name. He was a middle-aged man that had glasses and comb-over with blindingly white skin. I would rarely see him talking. In fact, I don't think I had ever seen him converse with any of the work staff on a conversational level when I started working there. Now I know what you're thinking. Maybe this guy is an introvert, or maybe he has some social disorders, and he just prefers to stay quiet. But let me tell you, actions speak louder than words, my friends. And what this guy has done to me, to my colleges, will haunt us for the rest of our lives. The only time I saw him express some real emotion was when he left his phone on the counter. I picked it up just to see what sort of background this guy had, seeing as he was so strange. He immediately came back and snatched it out of my hands. "Do not ever touch my phone," he screamed at me. That was the very time I had ever heard him yell in all the time I had been working there. One day, Joe came into work with an entirely different persona. He had been proposing we start doing all these new things with the McDonald's. All of them were either disturbing, creepy, or just flat out disgusting. One of his proposals was that he start dressing up like Ronald McDonald and having tickle fights with the kids. I don't know if I stated this already, but this guy is in his fucking 40s, and he's acting like it's completely normal. I passed it off as I thought he was just trying to make me laugh with some sort of awkward humor that only someone like him could muster. One of my other co-workers, Maya, had told me that he said that he thought it would be funny if he started hiding in people's cars and surprising them with free Happy Meals. Said that it would bring people back to McDonald's more often. In the coming weeks, he would start asking us about more personal questions like what we think the age of consent should be and what we think happens after we die. He told us that he believed that there are slaves in the afterlife and that people like Hitler will have the most slaves because he killed the most people. This guy was just getting creepier by the day. Last week, we had found a hidden camera in the women's restroom ventilation. We checked to see who put it in there, but we couldn't make out a face, and it definitely had to be one of the staff members because all we could see was a uniform. My manager immediately started accusing people of it, mainly the guys, which was me, these two other guys, and Joe. Joe remained silent like he always did, and just awkwardly looked around the place while talking. So, my manager assumed it couldn't have been him. Finally, one day Joe had said he was going outside to smoke, and he had left his phone in the back of the McDonald's. Maya and I had been trying to guess the password, and miraculously we opened it by it being 4321. This guy was not very clever. As we scrolled through his camera roll, we had discovered a couple of pictures of kids on his phone. Maya had told me that she didn't know Joe had kids. But as we continuously scrolled through his camera roll, we saw that there were provocative pictures of kids from all ages taken inside the McDonald's. We immediately showed our manager, and we waited for him to come back inside. When he came back, my manager tore him a new one and said that she would be contacting the police. He immediately glared at Maya and I, and he muttered softly, "Yo, you went through my phone?" After that, he started walking towards us, and we immediately got the fuck out of there and waited for the police. They arrested him, and we haven't seen him since. Now this is where it's been getting fucking strange. A month had gone by, and Maya and I had been getting close. We started going out, and in some strange way the incident had made us bond more and had led us to start seeing each other. Life seems to work in very odd ways. One night we went out and we went to the movies for a date. It wasn't until midway through the movie that someone with a comb-over haircut and glasses got up from his seat and exited the theater. Maya had looked at me and asked if I had seen that guy. I nodded my head, and we both just spent the rest of the movie wondering if it had been Joe. As we were going back to my car, I looked inside my window to find that there was a Happy Meal just lying in my car seat. Now, the last thing I would ever bring on a date is a Happy Meal, and it had not been there before. But what freaked me out was whoever put it there must have gotten it no more than a half an hour prior, because it was too hot for it to have been sitting there for a substantial amount of time. We looked through it, and was a standard Happy Meal, and nothing was out of the ordinary. I realized that if that was indeed Joe we saw in the theater, that would mean he must have been watching us, and even knew which car was mine and had put it there. I immediately threw it out, and we left to go back home. It was one Sunday afternoon when Maya texted me a very odd message that broke my heart. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but we need to break up. I have been seeing another guy, and unfortunately, we can't see each other anymore. Don't take this the wrong way, you're a very likable guy. I am asking you, please don't hate me for this. I hope in the end we can still be friends." I completely lost my shit. What the fuck? What did I even do for this to happen to me? I called her and she didn't pick up. I Snapchatted her and she never opened it. I called her damn house phone, and she didn't respond. This had to be a joke or a prank or something. Then I realized that every first letter in that text that was capitalized spelled something out. Have, H-I, each, E or, likable, L, please, P, G, me, M, and I, E. Spells, help me. I immediately took my car and drove over to her house as fast as I could. I rang her doorbell multiple times and no one answered. Her car was gone, and I went through her back door and no one was in the house. I called the police and there was a full investigation. She was gone. I couldn't believe it. I had told the police of everything that had happened and they are still looking for her. I have been crying every night since then. This was all my fault. Joe had taken her all because I thought it would have been funny to go through his phone. The only good thing to happen to me in the last 10 years of my life was gone. It's been a month and I still haven't recovered. Maya has still not been found, and I have become a raging alcoholic because of it. It wasn't until yesterday morning that I was taking the order through the drive-through speakers that someone on the other end just didn't talk. "Hello?" I had asked. Then the person on the other end started screaming. It wasn't until the eye kept listening that I realized it was Maya's voice. She was crying in agony. "Please don't kill me, please." Then the screaming got more intense. I nearly vomited. Finally, the screaming stopped and I realized it had to have been a video that the person was putting against the microphone. The final words the man spoke into the mic was, "I told you not to go through my phone." Story 3. We thought McDonald's was running a contest. The truth was much more sinister. My friend RJ has always been interested in puzzles, so much so that it sometimes drove a wedge between him and other people. He tends to get invested in more elaborate ones to the point of obsession, and if you're not as quick to put something together as he is, he can be a bit condescending. Overall, I think he's got a good heart though, so I don't mind the occasional assholery. I was sitting in the school cafeteria Thursday afternoon when RJ plopped himself down next to me. He wore that shit-eating grin that said, "Teed just posted a new logic puzzle. So, what have you got for me today?" I asked him. "Your parents are pretty chill, right?" He asked back through a mouthful of pizza. "I mean, yeah, I guess. Depends on what you mean. You think they'd let us go out Saturday morning around 3? I want to try something out." RJ had piqued my interest and was hamming it up now. He was trying to suppress a smile and act all mysterious, but it wasn't working. "You gotta tell me what it is first," I said, laughing to myself a little bit. I knew he wasn't gonna talk, though. He was relishing his little secret too much. He just shrugged his shoulders at me and turned his head back towards his pizza. "I'll tell you more this weekend." Friday night came and I got a text from RJ around 10 hour. "Don't fall asleep, dickhead. I'll be there at 3 sharp." I knew why he was doing this. RJ didn't have a car and relied on me to take him places pretty often. Where he wanted to go at 3 a.m. was beyond me, though. He's not exactly the kind of guy to get drunk in the woods. By 3 o'clock, I was on my second cup of coffee and still fighting to stay awake. RJ showed up at the front door, wide awake. "Ready to go to McDonald's?" He blurted out as soon as I opened the door. I mimed slamming the door in his face, which didn't change his attitude in the slightest. "I think you finally owe me an explanation," I said, shaking my head. "Why are we going to McDonald's?" RJ explained it to me as we got into the car. He spends a lot of time on 4chan, I don't. Apparently, he came across this thread about weird receipts at McDonald's. There were a couple pictures included from people who had received these receipts. They all had a number written in red ink at the bottom of the paper. As an aside, I tried to find this thread he was talking about while I went to post this, but didn't have any luck. I don't ever use 4chan though. If anyone can find the receipt pictures and link them in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. RJ told me that some people noticed all of the receipts were processed at 3:33 a.m. on a Saturday. This little detail is what got them thinking this wasn't a coincidence, but might be some sort of big McDonald's secret challenge. kind of like Cicada 301 or something. I actually thought this was pretty cool. I knew KFC did something like this with their Twitter account. They sent the guy who figured it out a picture of him getting a piggyback ride from Colonel Sanders. I thought maybe RJ and I could get one with Ronald McDonald if we figured this out. All of the receipts had another thing in common. They had all ordered exactly 5 menu items. The red number at the bottom of the receipt was always a digit 05. These menu items differed from receipt to receipt, but they were all numbered orders. For example, hash 1 was always the Big Mac Dottie. RJ explained that this led to them guessing that the numbered menu items formed some sort of code that needed to be input in the right order. And I think I know what the passcode is, RJ said in a dramatic whisper. Look at the receipt with a red 5 on the bottom. He continued. They ordered 2 number 1s, 2 number 4s, and a number 8 dottie. I think those are the digits of the passcode, 11,448. They just need to be rearranged. And you figured out the right order? I asked excitedly. I'm pretty sure I did. I just hope no one else has beaten me to it. Well, what is it? You'll see soon enough, RJ replied. His sly grin had returned. I pulled into the McDonald's parking lot. It was almost completely empty. I could see a couple employees and a lone customer inside. There was no one in the drive-through line. Just pull up to the start of the drive-through and sit there. Don't place an order yet. RJ instructed me. We have to place this order at exactly 3:33. I didn't like the idea of holding up the drive-through line, but like I said, there was no one around. So I figured it wouldn't be too much of a problem. We sat in silence for the next couple minutes. I kept my eye on my mirrors to see if anyone was trying to get into line. RJ kept his eye on his phone, watching every passing minute. At 3:32, he told me to drive up to the speaker. We sat there silently for what seemed like an eternity as the poor employee tried to get us to talk to her. As soon as a minute passed, RJ leaned over to my window and placed our order. I'd like a number 1. I'll take another number 1, please. A number 4, a number 8, and another number 4. We watched as each number popped up on a little screen next to the speaker. RJ seemed satisfied with the results. The employee told us to pull forward. So, how'd you know that was the order? I asked RJ. He wouldn't tell me though. He just smiled and shrugged his shoulders again. We got our order and paid. The woman working the window didn't give us a little wink or a knowing nod or anything. In fact, she seemed incredibly bored. I handed the bag to RJ, and he tore through it for the receipt. There at the bottom, instead of a red number, was a red address. Holy shit, I muttered under my breath. RJ waved the receipt excitedly at the employee. Is this it? Are we supposed to go here? He asked her. The woman seemed incredibly confused. She looked at the receipt and squinted her eyes. She told us she had no idea what that address was or why it was on our receipt. RJ and I exchanged incredulous glances. Were the employees not in on this? Who was monitoring it and writing in the red ink? Maybe they were just instructed to play dumb. We pulled out of the driveway and I had RJ put the address into his phone. It was only about a 15-minute drive from where we were, and sure enough, it was another McDonald's. At this point, I was totally invested. RJ didn't even have to ask me. I was already driving towards the second location. Once we got on the road again, it was completely silent. There were no cars or people anywhere on the street. I suppose it wasn't too weird for such an odd hour. Still, something wasn't sitting right with me. RJ seemed to feel it too. The sense of calm. There was no sound other than the purr of the engine. No rustling tree leaves, no overhead planes, no crickets. Nothing. I shrugged it off at the time as a side effect of being so tired, but now I'm not so sure. When we finally got to the second McDonald's, the parking lot was completely deserted. There were no cars, not even for employees. All the lights inside the restaurant were on, but peering through the windows, it didn't seem like anyone was inside. That's weird, I said as we walked up to the front door. There's no one here. I reached forward and pulled on the glass door, expecting it to be locked. Instead, it gave way immediately. letting off a cheery chime that seemed to linger in the air. Hello? I called out as we walked into the McDonald's. As I spoke, my breath appeared like a thick cloud in front of me. It was freezing inside. Each of our footsteps echoed off the tiled linoleum floor. Is anyone here? Silence. This is so fucking weird, RJ whispered. I'm gonna check the kitchen. Maybe there's someone back there. I wasn't sure if that was a good idea, but he was already leaping over the counter. We should go, I said. I don't want it to get in any trouble here. This feels weird. No, wait, hang on. He snapped back. What's that? RJ was behind the counter looking out towards the seating area. I turned around, following his gaze. There, alone on a table in the middle of the room, was a single Happy Meal box. We made our way over to the Happy Meal. On closer inspection, we could see a napkin sticking out from under the box. There were 2 words written in the same red ink. Choose one. I looked back at RJ, and he was just nodding at me furiously to open the box. So I opened the cardboard and reached inside. There were 2 small figures wrapped in plastic. Happy Meal toys. But as I looked at them more closely, a feeling of dread began to settle in the pit of my stomach. The figure in my right hand was short and stocky, while the one in my left was taller and more slender. One wore a green hoodie and jeans. The other was in basketball shorts and a t-shirt. One. It was us. The figures were so detailed, down to our eye color and shoe brands. They were dressed exactly as we were at that moment. Tiny replicas of terrifying accuracy. RJ reached over and took his figure from my hand. What are? Who could the... How is? RJ started asking through increasingly quick breaths, examining his own likeness in the toy. Dude, we need to get out of here. I managed to whisper back to him. I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but I was thoroughly creeped out by the whole thing. This didn't feel like a fun puzzle anymore. I turned and bolted back towards the door, still clutching my figure. RJ just stood at the table, staring at his miniature. Come on, man, I yelled back at him as I threw myself into the door. The door gave way, and I was met with a blast of heat. The silence seemed to crack as I crossed the threshold outside of the store. A train blared in the distance. A dog barked across the street. I could hear cars driving along the highway in the distance. A slight breeze scattered some leaves across the tarmac of the parking lot. It was as if the whole world collectively breathed out a sigh at once. I turned back to RJ. The store was completely dark. There were no lights on inside. RJ was gone. I was frozen in shock. I was standing inches from the door I had just come out of. A door that now seemed to lead to an entirely different place. I finally came to my senses and pulled at the door again in a panic, trying to get back inside. Maybe RJ had just moved somewhere else, I thought. Surely he was right inside somewhere. However, the door wouldn't budge this time. It was locked. I was completely beside myself at this point, calling out to him in a frenzy and banging on the glass door. After a few minutes of screaming, I had to stop and catch my breath. I sat down on the sidewalk in front of the door. I tried to stop myself from shaking and calm myself enough to analyze what exactly just happened and what I should do next. That's when I looked back down at the toy in my hand. It wasn't me anymore. It was a small replica of Ronald McDonald, but his eyes were pitch black. There was a little speaker on his chest and a button on his back. I threw it on the ground in sheer disbelief. As it hit the sidewalk, the toy let out a grainy whisper. Good choice. Now start running. Our 4th and final story, the night shift at McDonald's that made me resign. My name is Tom. I've worked at McDonald's for a pretty long time. It was the only normal option that I had in our tiny little town. Well, at least it was normal, until that one night shift. That night, I was set to the MC drive stance. My manager likes to stick me there, though I find it pretty comforting. The job is basically to sit on a chair next to the intercom, get the order from the customers outside, make it, and serve it to the customers through the reception window. It's much better than working at the counter with all of these extra ketchup and mayonnaise requests, and much, much better than cleaning the whole store. so I don't have complaints. The time was 11 p.m. Soon my shift would be over. I was leaning on the windowsill playing on my phone. Our branch is at a pretty isolated place outside of town, so we don't have that many people coming by, especially during these hours. Suddenly, the intercom bell rang, which means that someone is outside with his car and wants to order. I open my microphone and say, "McDonald's, Tom speaking. What would you like to order?" From the other side, I could hear the voice of a tired, middle-aged man. "Hey, yes. Give me 1 large fries and 1 large Coke." "No problem, sir. It's $12. And your name is?" "Bob," he says. "Okay, Bob. Please move forward with your car to the reception window and wait." That one is a piece of cake. I'm rushing to the kitchen, grabbing fries that were ready in advance and pouring into a large cup of Coca-Cola juice from the machine. As I step towards the window, I see a police car, and in the driver's seat, there is this fat cop who is waiting for his healthy midnight meal. He looks exhausted. Tough night. I ask him to break the ice. He sighs. "Yeah, just getting back from a harsh scene, terrible car accident, dot. Oh God, are there any fatalities?" As response, he takes his fat finger and slides it around his neck. I got the meaning. He pays me. I hand him his fatty bag and he drives away. You know, one of the interesting things about working at Me Drive is that I get to hear a bunch of different stories from a variety of people. One time it's a cop, another time it's a lawyer, and once in a while it's a drunk homeless guy who thinks that the window is the main cash register and yells at us when we try to explain to him that this cashier is for cars only. The branch has returned to be empty and quiet. I was playing on my phone, waiting for the shift to be over. After a few minutes, the intercom rang again. "McDonald's, Tom speaking. What would you like to order?" But there is no response from the other side of the line. Just a wired white noise. It's odd. Hello. How can I help you?" But the white noise is still there. No response. It's so weird, I tell myself. Maybe the microphone has stopped working. But a moment before I get out from the store to check it up, I hear a low voice on the intercom. "Hello?" a man's voice says from the other side of line. "Hey, good evening," I respond. "My family and I would like to order, please." "Okay, what would you like?" After a few moments of silence, the man says, "Me and my wife will have a double Big Mac meal with fries and Coke, and 2 Happy Meals for the little 2 on back bell." I'm writing down the order and say, "Okay, it's $40. What's the name?" "Just write the Goldberg family," he says. "Okay. Please move forward with your car to the reception window and wait for the order to be ready." Back to the kitchen, I turn on the oil heater and pour to it some frozen fries and fry frozen processed meat. When everything is ready, I put it all in a large carton bag and step towards the window. When I got there, I leaned my head out of the window and saw an old car moving towards me slowly. The model is a white Honda Civic with a lot of tin blows on it. It looks like they didn't even bother to take it to the garage or something. But who am I to judge other people? I work at the most doubtful place that exists after a whore. The car stops near the window and the father opens the car's window. "Hey, Goldberg's here," he smiles. "Hey, I'm Tom." He keeps staring at me with his smile without saying a word. I can hear the crickets from the embarrassing silence. "I'm okay. It's $40, please," I say to break the silence. Right, he says and opens his wallet, searching for money. As he continues to search for his money, one of the 2 kids suddenly yells, "Dad, I'm hungry," and then his younger sister yells too. "Yes, Daddy, bring the food." Their mother quickly turns her head to them and says, "Here, in a moment you'll have your food." While he continues to look for his lost money in his wallet, I leave their order on the inside floor under the window until they'll pay. Suddenly I'm starting to smell this awful smell of something burned, like something is burning really strong. I turn to the family. "I'm sorry, I gotta check something." Before they reply, I'm already running to the kitchen, ready to see the damage I did. God, I probably forgot to turn off the oil heater. But as I got there, the smell was no longer there. Nothing has been burned down and the kitchen looks normal as always. This is so wired. After a moment, I remembered that I have to get back to the reception window to complete the payment and deliver the family their order. but as I returned to the window, the Goldbergs were no longer there. Their bag is still on the floor, and they didn't leave the cash for it. I took my head outside from the window, and there was no sign of them or their old rusty car. A few moments after my shift was over, as I was driving home, I thought to myself, why the hell they leave without taking their meals if they were starving? And also, from where did this weird smell coming from? So wired. In the morning after, I arrived at a morning shift, again in a McDrive stance. As I step inside the branch's main entrance, I see all the staff and my manager gathering around the small TV screen. It was a news broadcast. It's rare that something happens in our little sleepy town, so it must be something serious that occurred. The broadcast begins, the anchor's face is serious, and with a dramatic pose, she says, "A tragic car accident has taken the life of a whole family." Oh God. I'm thinking to myself, it must be the accident that the policeman talked about. But then, a video footage of the event is being played on the screen. In the video, there are a lot of emergency forces surrounding a vehicle that is on fire. And the vehicle is white. Not Honda Civic, with a lot of tin blows on it, just like the Goldbergs one. As I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on, the anchor continues. The Goldberg family were on their way from a long road trip, and all they wanted was to stop by at the close McDonald's branch just around the corner. But a few moments before, their car suddenly deteriorated to the side of the road, and the result was fatal. The vehicle crashed into an electric pole that was at the corner. Because of their high speed, the pole collapsed on the car and blew up, and the car caught fire, leaving the father, mother, and their 2 children to burn to death. The report ended. I stare at the TV screen, still can't believe what I just heard, mumbling to myself, what the hell? The dogs. They died? I'm Anina. Art. Cannot be true. I saw them alive yesterday. They did make it to the branch. I fucking took an order from them. Suddenly, before I can finish my mind, the intercom bell rings. It takes me a few seconds to realize, and it rings again. Tom, my manager accelerated at me. What are you waiting for? There are customers outside. Answer them. With my hand shaking and my heart beating fast as hell, I open up the microphone and say, McDonald's, Tom speaking. What would you like to order? But then... I hear this voice again. It's the dad. We didn't take our meals last night. Can you bring us food? We are so hungry. And dull.